you.
Members, that will take us to the next item that we'll take up, which is item number 3, and that relates to council office spending policy. You'll recall that we took this up previously. We walked through at the last Audit and Finance Committee and took discussion from different members. We posted on the message board on December 19th a new proposed policy. As was indicated at that time, the goals of that policy were, there are numerous goals, but 2 primary goals. One was to craft a single policy that compiles and incorporates information from the various and numerous administrative bulletins and governing policies that relate to mayor and council office budgets and staff spending. As we discussed at the previous Audit and Finance Committee meeting, we are unique by comparison to some other cities in terms of the sheer number of places one would have to look in order to find all of the different policies that apply to spending. So one goal was to get this all into a single place as best we can. Second was to provide some more precise definitions and greater clarity on permissible and impermissible uses of funds. What we did is we took the recommendations that council members made at that previous meeting and put those into the version that that we put on the message board on December 19th. So what I would like to do now, I mean, you've had it, and just so that we can move with some dispatch on this, what I would recommend we do is the following, because, and I appreciate in the last couple of days, there have been some message board posts about how to approach different things. What I think we ought to do, and subject to the, the committee and the other council members that are joining us today, how you want to approach, what I would suggest we do is this, we have a discussion about those parts of it, I hate to do it from a negative standpoint, but those parts of the proposed policy that perhaps you have a question about or a difference on that you would like to see changed, so we can have that discussion a little bit. And then what I want to recommend so that it is on the agenda that we have told the public that we think we could make, which is January 22nd agenda, the best way I think to do that is to have it come as a recommendation from the committee with the recognition that we're going to need to have amendments. And since a lot of the message board, I say we're going to need to discuss potential amendments. And since those amendments have not been put forward as amendments, what I would recommend we do is that we ask that those amendments be presented by, say, Tuesday of next week, which is 2 days before the meeting. It coming as a recommendation from a committee means it is, we can always pull it, of course, if we're on the consent agenda, but it's automatically not on the consent agenda under those circumstances, and we'll take it up as a standalone item. But that way we can have a discussion today, we can have it on the agenda for next week, and we can have everybody take the time to get their amendments drafted so that then everybody will have a chance to look at them. So with that, I'll just go in the order of people that signed up on the message board, if that's okay with everybody. And Councilmember Alter, I'll look at you first.
Sure. One clarification that I think was intended within this, but has been further refined, I know, by Councilmember Ellis, is just on utilizing the office funds as a transfer to another department to accomplish whether it is some of the speed mitigation that we talked about today, or in our case, we were able to support some parks items in District 5. I think that is something that we should be able to continue to do, and whether it is as part of the budget process or through an IFC, I think both make sense to me. So I would be just interested in that discussion, but not having a wholesale prohibition on that, I think, is important for being able to realize certain district level projects.
And I'll comment just because I was going to spend a lot of time with my, I've got dirt under my fingernails on this. And part of the reason the recommendation was made the way it was, is to make us more consistent with other cities. You don't see the ability, as I understand it, the way it was reported to me, you don't see the ability to make office holder, and I hate using that word because that always takes us over into campaign and expenditure. Mayor and council member, you don't see the situation of being able to utilize funds directly for payment outside of a budgeting process, or you have a unique situation in the city of Houston, but that's a unique situation. That's not a council manager form of government where the manager is offering up the budget opportunities and the kinds of changes that might be made in specific districts. So just so that you'll know how it got to this point, that was the approach that was taken. As it is, as you indicate, as it has evolved in terms of the message board, including with the response, I think, by Councilmember Lane to yours, and then the response of Councilmember Ellis to both of them. If we're going to allow for appropriated money for a budget office, and by the way, that would make the council unique. No other department can do that. So we would, that's another, I should have mentioned that. That's another reason that the draft you have, the proposal you have, is as specific as it is. But if that were the case, my recommendation might be that we do it through the budgeting process so that you're getting the recommendations from management and the whole council is getting an opportunity to look at what other needs that money might be. If a council office has, and I'm just going to make up a number, $25,000 that it doesn't need, in other words, we appropriated $25,000 more than that office needed, making the determination about where it goes ought to be part of in my view, ought to be part of the overall budget process. And at a time when we're looking at the overall budget process. In fact, you did some of that at the very end of our budget process this last time. So that's not an argument. Maybe it is an argument one way or another, but it's also to explain how we got to the point that we got to. Councilmember Lane, you were the next one to post, so I'll turn to you, and then I'll go to Councilmember Ellis.
I'd actually love to
Sure.
let Councilmember Ellis go next, and then I'll
All right, well, we'll let you run the show. There you go. Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you. Feels like a game of popcorn.
Yeah.
I will start on that topic simply because it's timely, but I wanted to tell a quick story about how we've allocated our office overage dollars in the past. In 2022, we had such significant overage that we were able to add $100,000 into Dick Nichols Park, and we did that by piggybacking that work into a plan that the Parks Department already had. So they were going to be going into that park and making some improvements, and we said, what if we sweetened the pot a little bit and added some more office dollars and really did sport court resurfacing and a couple of other things, including trees and fixing one of the water features that's there. So in that regard, it was helpful to be able to be nimble with the dollars. And so I just worry that there may be a moment if we only do it during budget or mid-year budget amendments, you tend to miss a cycle or end up with something where you're tasking a department, they then have to go into permitting, and all of a sudden your project that might have been quicker deployed is something that's taking a year or longer to get underway. And so I would prefer something that's a little more flexible. I think there's been at least 3 council members, including Councilmember Alter, that have put significant contributions into parks in their districts, which is something I think that our constituents really appreciate. So I'll work on some language for that, and I'm open to other conversations around how we need to word that. There's also a section that I put in here about permit a transfer to city department for clearly defined purposes, the timeline and how we get to allocate that, whether that's by IFC or at specific times of year, unexpended balance, a clarification that unexpended funds that are carried forward should not be used for ongoing expenses such as regular employee personnel. I have an employee on my staff that is part-time temporary, and so we have been able to use our one-time dollars to be able to staff that person. And that's something that's really helped us in the meantime to be able to fill a skill and asset that we needed within our city office. And then software and IT services, I think, as much as we try to make sure that our software programs are things that the entire city is using, I realize there is an IT assessment currently ongoing right now about how do we make AutoCAD. We shouldn't have departments with their own different types of licensing, and we need to make sure our GIS components are all functioning so that we can get the best rate. I think that's a really good advantage for a city as large as ours with as many departments and staff members as ours, but I know that sometimes our offices are utilizing software programs such as Canva, where it's just easier for us to be able to carry our own standalone license and to be able to quickly deploy some of the work that we're doing. So those are the things that I've run through on the message board. I'm open to, we'll work on some language, and I'm open to other tweaks as we move through this process.
And again, this is by way of explanation. One of the things on software was that, well, there were actually two things that I'm remembering as part of what the process. One was to make sure that you don't get into a loop where the city's paying for something because for whatever reason, that office, maybe the person that was in charge of the software in that office isn't paying attention to the renewal, and you're getting automatic renewal, so we're paying for something that's not even being used. And that's part of what the centralized. The second is, of course, the savings. As I listen to you talk, it's the first time I've had this thought, so it may not be a good thought, but it follows up on what you're saying, and that is this. The way we approached furniture was to say that you could do furniture off the main deal if you could show that it saves money and that sort of thing. So what we might want to look at is language with regard to software, because I'd not thought about it until the way you just described it. So we'll also look at that and maybe get back to you on that. So, and I agree with you that the ability to be nimble is important. What I want to make sure is that as we go forward with this policy, that the public knows how we're spending this money, that it's very transparent, and that we're not over appropriating to council offices. If what we're doing is we're appropriating so much money to council offices that could be going to parks to begin with, and we need to figure out how we do that. And so that's the one concern I always have about doing it just as a standalone ISC, but I hear what you're saying with regard to the nimbleness of it. And then you had one other point that I wanted to address, which was the overage amount and how it gets used. That I get that that's very important. We are again unique in we would be the only, if we allow for unexpended money to be utilized to roll over, we again would be one of the unique cities in Texas, as I understand the report I received. In fact, I think that what I received told me that the only place that gets to do that is the Texas Senate. And that's limited to $20,000. There's a reason for that, and I think that is because, again, if you're over appropriating, that money could be utilized for other things, speed humps or otherwise, if you're over appropriating to council offices. By the same token, goodness gracious knows, we all know that something happens where you have less people. It takes a long time to hire the right person. You have reasons that you're frugal. Goodness gracious, you're frugal. And so you have some unexpended balance. And what we don't want to do is create the wrong desire, which is, okay, now I've got to spend everything. Right. I will tell you, my experience in the Texas Senate, that was what some members said, spend it all, because otherwise they're going to take it and they're going to spend it on something you don't want. Well, the good news is we kind of all want what we're going through the budget process, a little bit different. But my point being, what we attempted to do with the $50,000 is what we attempted to do there was we attempted to come up with some sort of balance. And it's always going to be let's be candid about it. It's going to be an arbitrary number if you're trying to balance between the unintended consequence of having people spend money they shouldn't be spending and having too much, in other words, over appropriating too much. And that's how we came up with that. So just, and then to your point about how it gets spent, I think we need to talk a little, frankly, I need to hear a little bit more on that, to talk about, a little bit more about that. And again, I'm not arguing one way or another. What I'm trying to do is just give you the background on how much effort went in to try to come up with a number.
And I certainly appreciate having this much framework and guidelines to be able to work within, because I know a lot of work has gone into it. At this stage of where I am in this term, we are now at like 96% personnel. So
Yeah.
a bulk of the office allocation is going to salaries and healthcare and other sorts of things that are specifically related to personnel. In years past, I had vacancies where I could accrue some of that money and deliver something big for the district. But I also know that, what District 8 asks for in improvements that aren't necessarily at the top of the list for the departments may be very different from what everybody else's district is needing. And so I know that Councilmember Fuentes had also had an item a while back about how do we better deliver for our districts and make sure they know that government is being responsive to the needs.
And one of the thoughts that in preparation for today, one of the thoughts I had about this unexpended balance amount, and Councilmember Velasquez had also posted something on the message board about this. I want to call out that he also was thinking about this. But one of the thoughts was that it not be, we start applying this in the next budget cycle, so that what we do is we don't start from a standing start on that item. We go ahead and start it with the next budget cycle, that there would be the limitation. So hold that in mind too, because that may be another way to do it the right way, but ease into it to make sure we get it right. Mayor Pro Tem Vela, followed by Councilmember Duchin.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate the kind of the unique nature of the rollover and the ability of council offices to use the unexpended funds for a district project or a specific project. However, other cities do have funds where they give, let's say, each council office a certain amount of money, knowing that, the people have kind of specific district level projects that their constituents really want. I know Councilmember Fuentes had a budget item on that, and I support that in principle, because if there is some kind of logjam in projects, or I really need to get some shade over this playground at this, something like that, where a council office can step in and say, you know what, we have $40,000, to get that project done. I appreciate that. I think that's probably a good thing overall. And again, since given the budget situation right now, I don't think we're going to be able to, budget $500,000 for each, council district to go to parks improvements or speed cushions or whatever the case may be. And so the rollover amount kind of fills that need to a certain extent, and lets individual offices decide, maybe I want to go low on personnel because I want to save up for this one thing that needs to happen in the park. So I just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, I think this is a good policy. I appreciate the changes, but I think we're on the right track here.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Duchin, followed by Councilmember Fuentes.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward, because I think it makes a lot of sense to try and consolidate this policy in one place and be transparent about it. I just wanted to add a brief comment and build on the carryover discussion. As a newer council member, it doesn't particularly impact me as much, but I can appreciate for some of my colleagues that have had a specific vision for these dollars, or have had accrued a fair amount of carryover over the years, that it's a much more critical item for them. Just to build on the mayor's point, just to be creative about how to approach this, whether it's grandfathering in some way some of the existing council members or delaying when this takes effect. I'm just hoping that we can be creative to try and figure out how to accommodate those folks that are in a different place than I am right now. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fuentes, then Councilmember Lane.
Thank you. And colleagues, just want to add my thoughts on the ability to use our office dollars for district-based projects. That is something that I know is a need for our community. It's part of the reason why I brought forward policy, which was unanimously adopted by City Council to establish district service funds. It gets to the fact that there are district-specific projects in our areas that we know that if we're able to deliver on, we can restore and improve confidence in local government, and we can show how we're making positive impacts in our communities. We're not alone in that effort. All the major cities have some type of district service funds, and it's set up as, it's set up so that each office has it available. Each office can participate. There's public dashboard. There's reporting requirements. It's transparent. There's an incredible way to do it, and it's something that this council has supported. The manager has put out a memo as an update to that resolution, and so right now we're at the stage of identifying funding for us to be able to move forward on that program. So just wanted to highlight that we do have policy on the books that gets towards that need. And my question on this framework is really just the implementation date, how soon and when it would take effect. And Mayor, you covered that. And the last thing I want to highlight on the software is that there are opportunities for us to better align and streamline our office expenditures when it comes to software. I know that my office and a couple other offices have constituent service management CRM software for constituent cases, and it is pretty pricey, and it would be great if we could align all of our office accounts to perhaps get a better deal on it. So there are instances like that where we could work together.
Great. Yes, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Lane.
I wanted to add some just additional context related to my district and some of the broader issues. First, in relation to the ability to transfer savings to district level priorities. As I noted the last time we discussed this, first of all, I'm very appreciative of this work. So important. I love the direction that it's going. But as I noted in the last meeting, I think that it is very worthwhile to put focus on what are the allowable uses well before implementing any kinds of caps or eliminating carryovers. And I also want to recognize the city manager and so many of the assistant city managers for the work, and our deputy city manager for the work they've been doing to reorganize, to streamline IT, to bring us to the point of being able to provide data-driven spending on city services in a much more meaningful way than we ever have before. But let's recognize that that's not complete yet. And so I, as a council member, for example, am trying to serve a district that has been on the high, the seats on the spots on the high injury road network have gone from 11th to 6th. It's been a decade. There's no speed cushion. I might want to allocate some funds towards a speed cushion at that intersection. It's been so long coming. Another example, so those types of, we need flexibility and timeliness, as the Mayor Pro Tem Vela said, to be able to be responsive, particularly as we know it may take a while for new bond funding to come in. There's the need to be able to attract new partners. Now, for those who represent primarily central areas of the city, this isn't such an issue. We've worked with Travis County for a long time. We've worked with AIC for a long time. We've worked with the nonprofits that are active in our areas a long time. All of this is underrepresented for my district entirely. And so it is very important to have the flexibility to be able to bring some amount of funding to even some of these small projects like the Charlie Center showers. If we can't find it another way to be able to expend a few $1,000s to help that nonprofit do such important work, where once we get to the point that we have these consistent data-based measures of our effectiveness around homelessness and so many other things, we will find that they are a very efficient service provider. I've looked at the data. And so to be able to help them over humps when the broader city isn't quite ready to prioritize is important. So in addition, I think to identifying these core values or the uses, there would be the ability to, for example, at the end of the year, I understand it is very uncommon to allow an account to get bigger and bigger at the end of the year. I personally am not very familiar with entities that allow that. But I also know we're talking about a multi-year process before we truly get data-driven and have funding for things that have been missed for some time. I'll just say that. And so I think there is a possibility of transferring out of the mayor and council office budget to a line item that designates that it was a rollover purpose, that the city manager, for example, could put a rating of importance level, the council member for that district could put a rating of importance level, and it could go to the council for approval. Like, there are processes that can remove it out, but still allow that to accumulate and be put to effective use. And sometimes I will need to allow it to accumulate because there are some extremely unsafe spaces for our school children that have not been addressed, that are going to take a little chunk of change to address. And so I'd really like to have that flexibility. And then if we also look at the ways in which, or think about the ways in which the outlying areas have in many ways neglected, or in some ways neglected, at least in certain parts of the city, I will give the example of the District 6 Council Office that was established in the year that this council went to 10-1. Because of the challenges of our constituents connecting with the city. And it remained an item that came out of council budget until I eliminated it because the rent was going up to $18,000 a year. Plus I would have need to fund capital improvements in order to update it. And it is an expense that no other council office bears. So that, I think it is important to have timeliness and flexibility as long as it's leading to a more sustainable solution. So that Band-Aid didn't lead us to a solution. So I don't want to keep expending that as a unique expense for my office to bear. I want us to find a solution. But currently what is required, because there are not very many city-owned facilities, is that I spend more money on community engagement. I'm at this point relying on goodwill of businesses and nonprofits that we have cut funding for as a city to find community meeting spaces that are appropriate, even for such important topics as the budget town hall. So this is different from the rest, I understand. And we have, and on a broad level, talked about how there are different situations of each council office. But I want to highlight some of the very meaningful ways in which it is important to take some time to at least see how this is being used. And we have a city manager now who is so, and the specific projects that are being worked on around data are so taking us in the right direction. We have the opportunity to see what council members are indicating is their highest priority and use that to inform planning. That possibility has never been available, or I don't see it being available in the recent history. And I think we would be missing an opportunity that matters to our city and to its ability to meet longstanding needs of our residents if we just cut off the possibility as a no longer. Instead, I really would support a policy that allows us to see how the funds are being used and directs to appropriate uses. So I hope those few examples are helpful on that. My other comments are briefer. I also will say that I think that there are, even though we may not see peer cities having a fund in this exact format, we do see peer cities who have district-specific infrastructure funds that those council members can use in a similar way. And we don't have access to that. That was eliminated. And so some time back. So I do think it's important. On to the cap on the dollar amount. I have covered that already. You'll be happy to hear. I want to mention on software. As you know, I bring in a different experience than we've had on council before. And I'm going to give an example of a resource that provides data on housing, on apartments, all over the city, from affordable to student to conventional, all different types of apartments around the city that and it is an extremely effective data source for planning. And I've mentioned it in a lot of different meetings across departments and other agencies. I haven't seen this resource being used, and I think it could really save time and money for our city. And so, I've secured a subscription so that I can refresh on how it works and start to share that information more concretely with others. I'll tell you what, it is definitely on my list to get that looped into the city's subscriptions at the point at which a decision is made on how effective it is. But having the flexibility to be able to grab the data and deliver it to Cap Metro upon their request it makes us more effective as a city. So I really would like to preserve the flexibility and timeliness of response that's possible. And this is the role of our council members to elevate constituent concerns that, in our view, from having been on this council, are significant and merit quick resolution, as long as that's being used to inform our city manager's decision-making going forward. So those are my thoughts on that.
Great, thank you. And the only thing I'll add to that is that key among that, of course, is making sure, and I think, go back to what we tried to do on the furniture thing, is we were looking for a way to allow for something unique, but also save the money. So everything you just said, you mentioned all the benefits, but it could happen, not you, but somebody somewhere, sometime in the future might say, well, I've got this benefit, and I've put this benefit over the fact that it's 10 times the cost. And so we need to figure out, as we do some of these things like this, figure out what the right mechanism is to make sure that it is consistent with the overall city goals, even though there are specific district goals, and we make sure we do it in a way that is cost effective. So, all right, well, with that, I appreciate the conversation. That's what I was hoping would happen today. So what I would suggest is, I'll go back to where we were before. I would suggest that what we do is we take a motion that the Audit and Finance Committee recommends adoption of the proposed mayor and council office expense and spending policy, recognizing the opportunity for the full council to offer amendments at the full council meeting on January 22nd. It's made by Councilmember Fuentes. It's seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Members, is there any more discussion on that item? Councilmember Duchin? Yes, Councilmember Siegel.
I thought I had pressed the button. Can I just offer one comment?
Sure.
It's kind of the prior conversation before the vote. On the software and IT services item. By the way, I also very much appreciate this whole effort and support it. On the second bullet on the software and IT services item, there were two elements that I just want to flag. That coordination with Austin Technology Services is currently a requirement to download a new app, but it can be very cumbersome. Sometimes it could take months. So I would just ask that on the manager side of the equation, that ATS kind of have a more rapid response way. Yeah. And then in the definition of duplicate resources, as long as we're saying, like, don't buy a license that's already bought by the city, that makes 100% sense. But, you know, the Microsoft Office suite applications sometimes do things, but not as well as another app could. And I want that kind of situation not to be considered duplicate. Thanks, sir.
Well, as someone who really doesn't like Microsoft Teams and all of that, you're talking, I think you just got me. That's a very important point there. And sometimes that gets lost in when we talk about cost effectiveness, the efficiency of the system sometimes gets lost. So thank you for bringing that up. Councilmember Duchin, I don't know whether you're still there, but we're getting ready to vote. So I'd ask that if you can turn on your camera if you wish to be voting on this. Good, there you are. If there's is there any further discussion with regard to the motion as I read it? Then without objection, we will recommend adoption of the proposed mayor and council office expense and spending policy, recognizing an opportunity for the full council to offer amendments at the full council meeting on January 22nd. And that passes without a no vote. With that being said, again, what I would ask everybody to do is provide on the message board your proposed amendments by Tuesday so that we'll have an opportunity to do this efficiently. I'm very pleased, I will say, that we're down to just a couple of items, and they're legitimate discussion items, right? So I'm pleased to see us doing that. Let me also, before we move to the next item on our agenda, I want to say a big thank you to Carrie Rogers, our Intergovernmental Relations Officer, and Diana Thomas, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, for the help that they've provided on all of this and the the ability to track down information and seek answers to questions about different things that might be going on in different places. As I said in the message board post, they've been great, and I think I wrote that well. They've been great. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate what y'all have done, and the whole council does. All right, so that takes care of item number